Hello, my friends, and welcome back. We are super excited today to have a very, very, very special guest, Mr. Ron Hardman, the creator, the owner, the founder of Kilroy's Workshop. Let me tell you a little bit about Ron. Ron Hardman is the founder and owner of Kilroy's Workshop. It's a family-friendly metalworking school in Colorado Springs for ages 9 through adult. He's a dedicated husband and a homeschooling father of 4, ages 13 to 24. He also has a background in tech and has been an Oracle database consultant for groups such as NASA and JPL, Aurora Public Schools, and ASD District 20 in Colorado Springs. And he is also a champion on, if you've seen the History Channel's Forged in Fire. He is one of the champions on Forged in Fire, and he's had multiple champions come out of Kilroy's Workshop. So if you recognize him, that's probably where you've seen him before. So Ron, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thanks for having me here. This is amazing.
So my kids, I actually have 3 kids who have gone through the Forge. One, my 11-year-old is going through the class this semester, your basic class. But before we get into Kilroy's, how it got started and all of that fun stuff, let's talk about you and your personal homeschooling experience. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, sure. And like most people, I think when we get into homeschooling, my wife and I were looking at the public education system. I came through public school. My dad was a public school teacher for 36 years. I was out of Wisconsin. My wife was out of New Mexico. And yeah, there are multiple reasons why we didn't want to go the public school route, And when we first made the decision, we were actually on a 2-year stint in California at the time in the East Bay of San Francisco. So we really didn't want to be part of that system out there. And it's a little nerve wracking, to get into that. And so we just started doing research, and my sister actually kind of paved the way for us and got us over some of the nerves, realizing that really when my daughter was 4 years old, my 24-year-old daughter was 4 years old, we really didn't need to worry about her high school graduation at that moment. We needed to worry about next year. And so trying to take it one step at a time, one day at a time, that was a huge lesson for us in getting to recognize that we don't have to solve all of the problems and all of our questions before we hit the ground running. And we certainly don't need to try to replicate what public school was doing. That's the last thing we wanted to do. So that's how we got started.
Yeah, so what would a homeschooling day look like for y'all? I guess, still, because you still have a 13-year-old at home.
We actually have
so what does that look like for y'all?
Yeah, my 13-year-olds are.
Oh, I did not realize that.
Yeah, 20 girls. And so a typical day varies. That's just kind of not a typical day. It depends on the area of study that we're in. So we've got, we've done structured. We've gone through like Sunlight curriculum and things like that. Mm-hmm. But really what we do is we pick and choose based on the topic for the year. And so we still, guide them according to it. We don't do unschooling. We still have a plan structure to it, but from year to year, we just kind of follow the bouncing ball on what's out there already and do some research based on the nature of the kids that we have. And so my oldest daughter's path was a little different than my son's path, just because of the need was different. The areas of interest were different.
Wow.
And we let the day derail itself sometimes. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
So like
and it's okay.
It's totally okay. It's encouraged. My son was really into magnets for a while. And so we just kind of threw away whatever lesson we were working on that day. And we dug into what he was interested in. We were making electromagnets in the house and doing all kinds of crazy stuff with magnets. And it was a great time of learning. And then we came back to the structured stuff later. There's plenty of time in the day for that.
I love that. Okay, so then how did Kilroy's Workshop come about? You're homeschooling, you're working in technology.
Yep.
Tell about that story.
So my dad, he was a shop teacher. 36 years he was an instructor in public education, but his master's degree was in special education. He switched to shop class largely because he was getting a lot of people coming into special education who he said shouldn't have been there. They just got sidelined because they didn't fit the typical framework for, sit down, shut up and read, War and Peace.
Yeah.
It was where they needed to get up and move. And today we classify them as ADHD. That was a fairly new diagnosis back when I was a kid, as far as being rampant. But they were diagnosing pretty much every boy at the time as ADHD
Yeah,
because we couldn't
still
sit.
do.
Yeah, exactly. And my dad said that I would have been diagnosed as ADHD had he allowed it. Instead, he diagnosed me as a shop class kid. And so every day after school, I was in shop class. I loved physics because it was hands on. I loved everything that was application based. And I had to move. And so he helped me with that. I never thought about it. It wasn't anything that I never got medicated for it, or anything like that. Like when I read, I walk when I do that. When I was doing computer programming, I had a treadmill desk. You just find ways to make that work. But shop class is my home environment. And so I started working at a factory when I was 14 years old. I started my first business when I was 12. And then factory when I was 14. By 16, I was running a CNC lathe and milling machine at Woodward Governor. Now just Woodward. There's a plant up in Fort Collins here, actually. And it put me through college. And the trades it's always been good to me. And it kept me sane when I was doing computer programming. And yeah, it just kind of grew up from there. And for Kilroy's sake, we were homeschooling, and I realized, okay, now I've got this background. I can teach my kids all this stuff, but there's so many people that don't. And so that's where school started.
So, okay. And really quick, what business did you start when you were 12?
I was going around, I actually went around, they were doing a lot of construction in our area, and my parents didn't know
Uh-huh.
it. I actually walked around to all of the construction crews, and I noticed a problem that they had is these guys couldn't pick up after themselves. And so I hired myself out to go around and actually straighten everything up for them and collect everything. And at the end of the day, I'd go out there and I'd just take care of business. They'd come in and they'd be able to start the day with a clean environment. So I didn't think of it as a business necessarily. And by 14, I was actually going around doing landscaping. And by 16, I had a trailer and my own tools and mowers and stuff like that. And so I started
I
subscribing
love that.
myself to Entrepreneur Magazine when I was 9. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That is so cool. Okay. So, which Kilroy, okay. So then we get your homeschooling, you decide, let's teach the kids
hmm
some, woodworking, metalworking, where did the name Kilroy's come from? By the way,
Um,
I've always wondered that, and I've never
yeah,
asked.
Kilroy was here is a cartoon character. It stems back to World War II with the name Kilroy. And the cartoon character actually goes back to World War I, even before that. They just kind of got matched together. And there was a rivet inspector back east in the shipyards that whenever he would sign off on his work, he would write Kilroy was here. Well, that was in weird places and ships and on transport. Troops would see it, and then they started tagging everything with it, and it went viral. Hitler even had a task force assigned to figure out what Kilroy was because it was everywhere. They'd put the character on. For example, we just actually did this really cool project where we had sand that we collected from Omaha Beach and Utah Beach from Normandy, and we smelted that into steel. We took a piece of the USS Texas battleship and made Damascus out of that, and then we made these 3D printed, forge welded plugs that go into that. We reduced them down to 3/4 of an inch in diameter, and it had things like the paratroopers insignia. All gave some gave all. We put all that together, and part of that was the Kilroy character. So, for example, if they did a forward advancement and they would send a scout in, and oftentimes when the soldiers would get to the spot where the scout was, they'd see a Kilroy sketch. Well, my great uncle was a World War II guy. And whenever he would write me letters, he would sign it with the Kilroy character. So I just grew up with that. And so it's a nod to history. It's a nod to my great uncle in that generation. And then also because of the Kilroy, we should always be so proud of our work as to sign our name to it. So that's
I
kind of
love
the
that.
backstory on that one.
Okay. Oh, that's so fun. Because I always wonder, I'm like, where did that
Yeah.
come from?
Yeah.
So, okay. So you're homeschooling your kids, and then you get this idea, we're going to teach shop.
Mhm.
Then what happened?
I rented an airplane hangar and a porta potty, and right near my house out at Meadow Lake Airport in Falcon. And for $400 a month, I took a chance. And I was still working my day job, of course, because there's no way that you're just going to start something up like that. And it was before Forged and Fire. I had one anvil and a forge and some woodworking benches from Harbor Freight. And I had to figure it out. There was no model for it. I couldn't look at another school and say, this is how it's done. I didn't want to follow traditional education because they've decimated public school system, shop classes. And so I needed to find new ways to learn for myself and then new ways to teach that to the kids. And I started off with just kids. For the first 5 years, we only taught kids. Adult
Yeah, and
education.
because you start as early as 9, right?
But I had to
Once
figure
a
that out.
child hits 9, that's yeah. Tell about that.
Oh yeah. So, cause I mean, I tried down to 7 because kids need to move and
Wow.
use their hands a lot and do things, but it depends on the kinds of projects that you're doing as to what you can actually do. So I tested different age groups in there to figure out what would be appropriate. We're actually starting a YouTube channel up. I'm posting the first 6 videos next week at a YouTube site called Running Kilroy's. And it's all about how we actually start, how you can actually start your own classes, things like that. And it's not specific to trades. This is just if you want to start up a school, this is how you actually can go about it. And it's all of our lessons learned in all of these little videos. But we had to figure that stuff out from scratch. And like I said, no model for it at the time. And so, we started off in that airplane hangar with a porta potty, and I invited neighborhood kids in, and they came, and we all learned together. How far I could take it in different directions and stuff like that. Also, what parents were interested in, because the parents are the ones signing them up, not the kids. And then, you just deal with and tackle the challenges. And then we grew to a larger airplane hangar with a larger porta potty. And then now we're at 21,000 square feet. And I've got 7 indoor bathrooms. That's actually how I measure our growth.
It's the bathrooms.
Bathrooms, yes.
Yes, because Kilroy's is the largest of its kind in the world, correct? And so I guess we should specify, what is Kilroy's workshop exactly?
Yep. So we teach blacksmithing, bladesmithing, welding. We go everything from 2-hour classes all the way up to professional. We're the only American Bladesmith Society approved school in the Western United States. We teach jewelry making. We teach casting. This morning, we actually cast a pin for the USS Arizona that's being commissioned, and that's going to be with the commanding officer. As that changes from person to person, the pin stays with the ship. And it has it has some of the USS Arizona that the Navy sent to us from Pearl Harbor, 1,107 souls on board.
Cool.
And so we actually measured out grain weight, and we approximate 1,100 pieces in each one of these medallions that we're making, each one of these pins, just in honor of them. So we get to do things like that and expose all of the students to that history as well. So there's a lot of that goes into it. But those are some of the things that we do here. We make overland trailers. Kilroy's actually split into 3 different companies now. So we've got Kilroy's Workshop, the school. We've got Excalibur Outdoors, which is our product line. That's a separate company where we've got government contracts. We're making knives. We actually just finished off a batch for a guy named Victor Marks today. And so we make their knives for training. They deal with human trafficking around the world. They've been over in Israel, doing a lot over there right now. We make their training blades too, because they teach some knife fighting and self-defense. And we just picked up the Air Force Academy contract for the first time ever. We're going to be making Air Force Academy sabers in the United States at Excalibur Outdoors in Colorado Springs. And our students actually get to have that right in the backyard. So they get to see it. And out of my 29 employees, 27 of them started off as my students. So That's pretty cool. So lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, and I was just saying, because you also started CAD classes too, and you do welding as well, correct?
We do, and we do a lot with additive manufacturing or 3D printing. And so we've actually, I got a patent with one of my young employees. He was 17 years old, and we designed a new way of actually fastening handles on with a cam system using polycarb and carbon fiber. And I mean, kids, the creativity is great. And, you and I have talked before about creativity. I get people who come in here all the time and they're like, I'm not creative. And I stop them right there. Everybody is. In the beginning, God created, first 5 words of the Bible. I'm a guy of faith. We're created in God's image. If the first 5 words recorded in Scripture are of God's creativity, and we're created in His image, what are we? Of course, we're creative. Sometimes it's just been trained out of us. One of my favorite TED Talks ever was Sir Ken Robinson. Back in 2007, 2008, How Schools Kill Creativity. And it's an industrial process. If you're going to have a consistent output, which is what they were looking for, you need to have a consistent input. The problem is the input isn't consistent. We're people, And you can take and then twist that and make it so that you take the creativity out of it. Discipline is one thing, but taking the creativity and the exploration out of it is another. Um, on that note, I actually had a young kid in here, 12 years old, and he is one of my, I call them, instead of ADHD, I call them my active learners, of which I
I
am
love
one.
that.
And so I actually encourage parents when they bring their kids into the shop, if they're on medication, try them without. I've only ever one time out of 11 years of running Kilroy's, asked a parent, maybe we should probably put him back on meds just for safety for now, but let's try it again later. And eventually he did come off meds when he was at the shop. But this young man, full of exploration, a good kid, not a mean spirited bone in his body. But I had an instructor call me up. It was for an evening class, and he said he just did something crazy. He said, "Can you talk to him?" So I said, "Get him on FaceTime with me." And he had picked up a handful of sawdust off the floor over by one of the grinders where somebody was grinding some wood, walked over to the forge and threw it in.
Oh no.
Yeah, exactly. And so that has ramifications to it. And there we go choices and consequences here. And so I said, "So why are you sitting out in the lobby right now?" He goes, "Because I did something stupid." I said, "Oh, well, okay. What did you do?" And so he told me what he did. And I said, what happened when you did that? And he said, it made a loud swooshing noise. And I said, "Well, yep. You know why?" And so we talked about the science of why with the expansion of the gases and everything else. And I said, "So you made that choice. Your consequences, you're sitting out here talking to me right now instead of working on what you're supposed to be doing. And what would be a better choice next time?" And he said, "To not do it." I said, "No, it's to ask us what would happen if then we get everybody safely away from the forge and then we do it and we talk about it together." Because
I love
the
that.
question is good, the exploration is good. Doing it independently, that was the mistake. But I didn't want him to learn the wrong lesson.
Yeah.
That exploration and that diving in and trying to figure this out. And I told him, I said, "Now you're 12. When you work at Kilroy's one day, you're going to be able to talk to a kid just like you and say, 'Oh, you think that's bad?'" when I was, when I was a kid, this is what I did. I mean, when I was 6 years old, this is the kind of kid I was. I got tired of walking to the other side of the house to walk down the stairs. So I drilled a hole in my floor. I went out to the garage, got my tools, drilled a hole in the floor, got it between the studs, which I mean, that was a miracle in and of itself, just that I didn't mess up something there. And then I got my dad's saw and I cut through the carpet and through the floor
Oh my gosh.
a hole. And I was tying off in my closet a rope so I could shimmy down to the basement.
Oh my gosh.
And and my parents caught me before I did that. And actually, after my parents passed away, we ripped up the carpet. I found that patch of what that was done. So that was me, right? And so um, I get it. I know where that comes from. I made a 16-point throwing star and was flinging that around my bedroom because it stuck on the drywall so well. So I was that kid.
That's
And
awesome.
but I was exploring. It wasn't mean spirited, and neither was this kid. And so we need space to be able to do that and to do it safely. But
Mhm.
I think we learn a lot through those things.
Well, I think it's fascinating because I remember it was a couple years ago, the first day that my son and daughter, it was their first day in the forge.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, parents come and see, and you showed us around. We
Yep.
had our safety goggles on.
Yep.
And then you're like, "Okay, parents, you can go and, be back in
Yeah.
X amount of hours." And I asked my kids, they get in the car and they're holding Viking knives. And I'm like, "You already made something?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, you didn't you spend the whole day learning about safety measures?" And they're like, "No, they told us, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Any questions? Let's get started." And then we got started.
Yep.
And I was blown away by that. And I was also blown away by the fact that I'm like, "And you did these.
Mm-hmm.
You made these knives."
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the semester, my now 16-year-old, at the time, I think he was 14, but he
Mm-hmm.
comes home with this axe that he's completely made on his own, and it looks like it's from a store. And it blew me away. But I was shocked at like how much trust you put in these kids,
Mm-hmm.
but they live up to that
Oh, totally.
trust,
And we put them in situations, so it's not like we turn over the entire shop to them. When we're working on the Viking knife,
Yeah.
it's a very controlled thing around a forge with an instructor right there. So we're always small class sizes, for example, no more than 3 to 4
Mhm.
students per instructor. And so we've got plenty of help there, and they're watching them all the time. And there are occasions. I would say that when I was first started this first 5 years, I was a sole instructor. If I'd be talking to 5 kids and I was showing them how to make a nail, for example, I was looking for that kid that's whistling, spinning around, not listening to a thing I'm saying, because I'm going to pair up with him and save his life. So
Yeah.
we're going to work together on that, and then I'll take and pair the other 2 kids up based on most responsible, maybe slightly less. Almost always, the kid whose life I had to save by pairing him up with me, almost always that ended up being the kid that ended up working the hardest at the end. They were really into it.
Wow.
They were just really wired at the time and very excited. And so they just needed to
Yeah.
calm down. And so we're pretty good at reading the kids when they come in here. And to be honest with you, adults too. There are some adults when they come in here. We do that too. And the other litmus test here is the first sign that I cut out on our plasma table. We've got a CNC plasma table. It says self-control starts with the tongue. That hangs up in my shop. And we are family friendly. No swearing, no bad jokes. Dad jokes are allowed and encouraged. By the way, we always mention that in our safety talk. But if somebody can't, or if they refuse to control their tongue, if they can't control this, I can't trust these. And they're welcome to not be here, because it's just
Yeah.
it's a sign of respect, right? You're in
Mhm.
my house. This Kilroy's workshop is my house. If you're not willing to respect that with your tongue, then you're not willing to respect it with your hands. And I can't trust you with your neighbor. And so when we're building out this community, I want the person at one anvil to be able to trust what the person at the next one's going to do. That's part
Yeah.
of the safety. And so people think of the language thing as not being a safety thing. It absolutely is, because it's a great filter. I actually told an adult who he was actually taking over a class at a local school, a shop class, and I said, "So this is what I've done. This has been great. Adding that in there,
Mhm.
no swearing, no bad jokes, all that kind of stuff. Maintain a positive attitude. Never tell me you can't do something. I'm the only one who says that. You ask me how. That positive attitude, that is great." And he goes, "Well, I'm not doing that." I said, "Well, okay." He goes, if I come over to your shop and you tell me I can't cuss, I'm a grown adult. I'll do what I want." I said, "Then you're welcome not to come."
Yeah.
And he looked shocked, like that I would say such a thing. But you just proved to me that you're not willing to follow my rules. How simple is that? And so in an
And you're in
environment
my
like,
house.
you're in my house. And so that kind of a thing really ends up being a safety thing, because it filters out then those people who would do other things. And so
Mhm.
in an environment like this, that's absolutely necessary. And
Yeah.
you lay down the rules and expect that they're going to follow them, but keep an eye out, because as they're learning and training, there's actions and consequences, and I don't want the consequences to be hurt. So
Yeah.
we really do keep an eye on that, more than our initial talk than you'd suspect. But we do want to get them working right away, though, because also if we wait too long, they lose interest, or they're just clamoring to get in there, and you lose their attention anyway. So we teach along the way, just like our
Mhm.
science. I mean, we teach heat treat not in a sit down lesson when they're not ready for it. We teach it as they're doing it, because they're active learners in
Gotcha.
large part.
So, what have you noticed, like, especially with boys in your shop? I mean, you get lots of girls in. I mean, my daughter went through,
Mhm.
but with the boys, because I've noticed, especially, like, I feel like our public school system has really done a number on our boys,
Absolutely.
and with confidence, and just tearing them down,
Yep.
and yet they need to move. What have you seen in your shop
Mhm.
that's been different?
One of the things that's been amazing to see is student to student mentorship. So not just from me and not just from my instructors, and obviously my instructors came from my student body. So they've been trained in that. But we go cross age. I don't have like a 9 and 10-year-old class and an 11 and 12-year-old class and stuff. They're 9 to 18, because my expectation is the
Mhm.
18-year-olds are going to be 18, and
Yeah.
they live up to it. And so there's a mentorship and that they can see there. A lot of my employees are in that 17 to 24 range, and they're great mentors. And I've got both, like you said, I've 30% of my students are female. 70%
Hmm.
male. And it's probably about the same makeup for my staff, roughly in that
Hmm.
range as well. But they're able to see good examples of that. And it's really cool to see too, because we don't just teach kids. If I can get cross generational attendance in here for some family events and things like that, like we do a lot with, especially Christmas time, families coming in and registering for classes to come in together. They get to see their parents maybe in a way, and especially the dads in a way that they don't get to see them otherwise. When I was a computer programmer, we had, take your kids to work day. And my son commented, he was like 9 at the time. And he commented to somebody that my dad plays on the computer all day. Well, no, I'm
That's
working, but
hilarious.
they can't tell the difference. But here they can. And so they
Right.
see their dad actually actively working and stuff. And it's a great bonding experience there. And then we do things like, I don't allow dead fish handshakes. So if a kid comes up and they shake my hand and it's one of these like floppy wrist things, I have them come back and give me a real handshake. That's not how blacksmiths shake hands. Come back here, But
Yeah.
I want it to be that positive male role model environment for both obviously myself, but then also the staff who is here to affirm that. That's a good
Hmm.
thing. So
Well, I love that because I mean, you're not just forging metal, you're forging men. You know,
absolutely,
these helping these kids become men and women. Again,
dangerous can
not
be
I
good and
haven't
bad.
seen as many girls.
Yeah, dangerous can be good
Okay.
and bad, right? And so we like the
Yeah.
good dangerous, and it's a Jordan Peterson thing. I mean, he talks about that a lot. Victor Marx, who we're making these knives for, big
Hmm.
advocate of healthy danger. It's a man when he wakes up in the morning. This was from Kingdom Man, I think it was the book. Um, he wanted to be the kind of man that when he woke up in the morning, Satan said, "Oh, it's nuts. He's awake." you know, um, you want to be that kind of a person, right? And that there's work to be done, and we're gonna go do the work that God's called us to.
I love that. So now, okay, so with your campus, because you've had public school districts reach out to y'all.
Yep.
Are you currently working with public school districts as well?
Um, that's a loaded one because I've had public school districts ask me to partner with them, and I won't do that. I will not partner directly with the public school
How
district. I
come?
always tell them they're more than welcome to send their kids, but that's going to be under my rules.
Hmm.
I've had districts tell me that they wanted to send their instructors here to teach in my shop, and I said no. My shop is my shop. This is
Not happening.
Kilroy's workshop, and you're welcome to start your own. And they can do that under their roof. But this is a different kind of place, and different kind of expectations are here than it
Hmm.
would be a public school. And I don't want to be beholden to a public school. Now, the closest that we've come to that is we actually work with Falcon Aero Lab. So Falcon Aero
Yes,
Lab,
I've got a
mhm,
son doing Falcon Aero Lab.
exactly right. And
Yeah.
so, and they get funding from the state, but it goes through Falcon
Hmm.
Aero Lab to us. We're not even directly associated then with those state dollars, but that allows the fees to be covered through taxpayer dollars that you're already paying in. And as homeschool parents, we pay in an awful lot of money that never gets used for our kids. And so I
That we
like,
never see.
yeah, exactly right. And so now you get to at least see some of that. So that's actually that avenue. Up until this year, it was all private pay. And so that's the only affiliation we've got with any kind of taxpayer funded types of things coming into the school here is through Falcon Aero Lab. But I don't ever intend to partner, so to speak, with the school district. But they're more than welcome to set up a
Hmm.
program here. I mean, I've talked to districts about that, and I would love to have their kids if they can come in
Hmm.
here. But their requirements are going to be the same as everybody else's. I'm not going to switch gears and compromise on principles in order to get a bus to show up. It's just not going to
Yeah.
happen. If I remove them, they're removed. I saw that with my dad. My dad in public school,
Hmm.
he'd send a kid out of the room to the principal's office, and the principal would send him back and say, "Your problem, not here."
Wow.
No, because it's the neighbor's problem. It's the other kid's problem, and so not just the schools. And I don't
Yeah.
want that.
So let's talk about the trades a little bit because you do train welding
Yep.
at your workshop,
Yep.
and you also. So I want to talk about the trades and then talk about just the number of people that have been coming to create a school like yours.
Yeah.
Do you see the trades becoming more popular again?
Yes. The average age for a welder is in the neighborhood of 51. I'm
Wow.
50. I know what my eyes are like now. I can't imagine being under the hood 40 hours a week, the welding hood, and
Mhm.
having to deal with eye strain and the headaches and everything else. And there are certain types of careers that AI and that they're going to take over. There is robotic welding and things like that, but there's always
Mhm.
hands on too. I mean, we've got a storage unit down the street from us. She always comes by and has us do projects around and things like that. So we've got, I mean, that's the entire thing with Excalibur is it's making product. So when you get functional at welding, think hot glue gun with metal, right? That's really what it amounts to. It's pretty straightforward, but it's a hands-on, face-to-face interactive thing. And there isn't anything in our lives that isn't related to welding in some way, shape, or form, right? Even fabric, like the clothing on our back, it's not metal, but it was made on a machine that's metal.
Mhm.
It has welds on it.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, we drive to work in our cars that are welded, and again, some of those are, they're manufactured that way. But then you go into a repair shop, you got to have welding work done, and so those jobs are going to be there. My son, at 19 years old, he had been with me for 5 years here working at Kilroy's, and he moved to Pierce, South Dakota on a Friday, settled in over the weekend. He went and cold called 3 places that were not advertising for work, got 2 job offers that day, one of them starting the next day, being a welder.
Wow.
So, and then he just
Wow.
got married. He's 20, got married, and they moved to Idaho. He and his wife. Again, he went out there. He got a job. He's doing construction and welding, and so those jobs are everywhere. And that's not something that AI is going to take away. It's not going to take over that.
Yeah, there's certain things like an AI can't be a plumber.
Nope.
Like
Nope.
there has to be people to do certain things.
Exactly.
So
And the key there too is relationship. So I made the mistake of going to Jimmy John's a couple weeks ago through the drive-through over on Circle, and I got up to the ordering station there, and the lady said, "What?" So I'd like to order a sandwich, if you don't mind. Ordered my sandwich. I drove up, and literally, she was talking over here, handing the food out the window like this. It opened. She never even looked at me, much less talked to me. She was talking to somebody else inside. I took the bag. She pulled her hand back in, window closed, and I drove off. AI can take that job as far as I'm concerned. She's not doing it. I'd rather talk to a polite AI.
yeah,
I hate to say it than somebody who's going to be rude it's a drive-through. How hard is it to
at
say?
the drive-through.
Right. And you take a look at even
Yeah.
like at Austin Bluffs and Academy here, we have a Dutch Brothers coffee right next to Starbucks. They both sell overpriced coffee and coffee like drinks, right? Drinks masquerading as coffee.
Mhm.
Roughly the same price between the two of them. Dutch Brothers has a line that wraps all the way around it. And the other day I drove past, there was a line wrapped all the way around and halfway around again. Starbucks had 2 cars in the lot.
Wow.
What's the difference? The difference is Dutch Brothers, they talk to you. They're polite. You're
Mhm.
seen when you go through there. Starbucks, it's hit and miss. It's a
Yeah.
culture that's at Dutch Brothers, and that culture isn't consistent over at Starbucks. One's successful in that regard, and the other one isn't. That's the difference. And so it's the same thing with trades. Don't just be in the trades, but enjoy what you do and remember that it's the people that you're talking to. It's like us in here. Like we make metal things in our shop, but our product is people and community. You're here for a reason, right? And it's up to us to kind of figure that out. The Surgeon General came out with a report this year on isolation and loneliness, and it equated
Mhm.
isolation and loneliness with smoking 15 cigarettes a day. More
Wow.
dangerous to your health than obesity. And 2022 had the highest number of suicides on record, right? And this is in the age of social
Unbelievable.
media because we've never been so antisocial. We've lost hope in the future and things like that. And when you can see somebody face to face and interact with them, that's a powerful thing about a school like this as well. You see that interaction face to face, and you get that that heart from somebody. That's
Yeah.
important. That's whether you're going through a drive-through. That's whether you're going to a school. That's you at the cash register when you're checking out. Call the person by their name and give them a smile. You might just save their
Yeah.
life that day. You don't know. They're finally seen. And so all that stuff is so important. Training that into the kids that's necessary as well turns around and then helps them as well at the same time. So I know we kind of wandered on that question, but it is very much at the heart of what we do here and what I see in schools, in the career choices that we make. And, it's not just the trade, but it's how we do it that matters. AI will never be able to replicate
Yes.
that interactive thing. So
No.
if you go down the road of welding, be a good welder, but be a better person.
I love that. Well, and I think that's something, I mean, started experience. I did this before I homeschooled, and now it's being done to me where people say, well, aren't you worried about your kids being socialized?
Hmm.
But I look at the public school system and I look at the kids who go to public school that my kids are friends with
Mm-hmm.
still, and there's not a healthy interaction that's happening. There's so much bullying. There's so much negative influences, and these kids aren't necessarily interacting with each other in healthy ways.
No.
And yet, so I'm like, yeah, no, I don't worry about socialization.
No.
I have watched in your workshop though.
Mm-hmm.
And and I've watched the different ages helping each other. I've never heard anything impolite. None of my kids have ever reported back like, oh yeah, I got bullied in welding. I mean, not in welding, but in forging or blacksmithing. Like never.
Yep.
Because, you've set up a culture
Yep.
where number one, you get a lot of homeschool kids who their parents be like, what, you don't be rude, but number two,
Yep.
I feel like you've set up a culture in your workshop that is so healthy and supportive and fun and comfortable. And that, I think that surprised me quite a bit when we started. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about.
Yeah. It's not what you experience in public school shop class at all.
Yeah, no, not at all. I remember in 8th grade, I was in 8th grade and I took shop and I got sexually harassed in 8th grade. I won't go into the story, but I started yelling for the shop teacher because of what this boy said to me. And it was horrible. I mean, it was horrible, but I would never see anything like that happen in your workshop because or if it happened, you'd nip it in the bud like that.
Oh my word, yes. And I won't say there isn't anything that happens, but boy, I mean, we're on it. Right. There's zero tolerance for anything like that. And so because kids will be kids and people will be people, but it's up to the adult to actually put the foot down and say, this is the expectation and you failed to reach it. You're never to do that again or you're out, or you're just out. I'm sorry if it comes down to it. That's not acceptable. And, just real quickly, a story, I'll call her Emma. It's not a real name, but she's just near and dear to my heart. She actually started coming here years ago and she was in middle school and really hard to reach kid. I had just started hiring some employees and stuff and they were coming to me. They're like, we can't even engage with her. She won't talk to us or anything like that. And I just like, keep loving on her. Something's going on. Her mom was driving her 2 hours to take a 3-hour class and then 2 hours back home. Wow. And they kept coming time and again. And they're like, she's not engaging. We don't know what's going on. Keep on loving on her. Keep on loving on her. Right. And she actually progressed. We came up with these different levels: apprentice 1, apprentice 2, journeyman, and master. So I bumped her from apprentice 1 to apprentice 2 because she earned it. And we don't flatter here. I wouldn't do it if she wasn't warranted. But we're hearty in our approbation and lavish in our praise, just like Dale Carnegie's book. And so, but tears just started streaming and she ran out of the room. And I asked Mom what was going on. And Mom said, well, she's getting bullied at school. Dad just left the home. She's getting bullied online. I've got a solution for that. And so, about the socialization aspect of it, how's that working out? So public schools don't have the corner on socialization. And she said, this is the one place she's found acceptance for who she is. And all of a sudden, it kind of like reminds me of The Incredibles. All of a sudden, she starts pulling her hair back out of her face. She starts interacting. But they had to move. And then they flew her back here, or mom flew her back here for a week to spend at Kilroy's. And they've come back multiple times since then. And last time she was here, she's a senior this year. Last time she was here, she asked me if she could come back next year and work. Yes.
Wow.
Right.
That is
And
very
so
cool.
the whole socialization argument cracks me up because it's been around forever with homeschooling, and it doesn't fly. Because everybody's unique and everybody has unique circumstances, and parents can drive that. And you have more time to be social, honestly, when you're doing homeschooling than if you're doing public school and have homework all night. It just doesn't.
It's true.
Right. You have more time to do things like Kilroy's. And it's also that cross section of ages. So, yep.
I love that. Let's talk about grading, because you and I had a conversation about grading, and I just a few weeks ago did a podcast about grading. Because you say out loud what you said about a C welder.
Yeah.
A person who got a C in welding.
You should never graduate with a C in welding. A C in welding, you can't almost die. It doesn't work. I don't want to drive across a bridge welded by a C welder. You're kind of there. No, I want that to be rock solid. So it either passes or it fails. And with the American Welding Society certifications and the types of testing that they do on the different types of welds, there are absolutely life and death situations for welding. I don't want that C welder, given a shot at it. I want the best, right? It's kind of like I don't want the C surgeon.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
You're either.
I want the absolutely passed surgeon.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You want the guy who just aced every test working on you. And so the same thing with the welders, because it's life and death, So yeah, that's my view on especially welding.
And I think it's a far more effective way, because, and my listeners know this, I'm not a big fan of grades. My son will grade himself, which is what pushes him. But I feel like grading kills motivation. It kills intrinsic motivation. But yet there's times that there has to be a pass fail, like in welding, or in forging. There has to be a pass fail.
Yep.
But yeah, getting a C, what does that mean? You're right.
I had this conversation actually with our welding students this morning, because we got a batch in here today, and they're going to be going for their certifications. And I told them flat out, I don't care about your cert. You can get it, right? Absolutely. Go ahead and get it, because the industry looks at your certifications to some extent. I want you to be so good that the certification is an afterthought. That it's oh yeah, I get, if I took that 20 times, I passed it 20 times. Not ooh, I got lucky, yay, I passed the cert. No, you just prove that you could do something once. I don't want somebody who can just pass it once either. I want somebody who every time they go up there, they can't help but do their best. And it's the same thing with the work ethic of these kids too. Don't go out there as a cocky welder and show up 10 minutes late to work. No, you show up 5 minutes early, leave 5 minutes late, do what you're supposed to do when you're there. Work ethic becomes part of who you are. Same thing with you when you're a welder. The skill, the pride of doing a good job, right? Do the best of your ability, and just make sure if your best doesn't measure up, get better, right? And seek help. Yeah. That's why we're here. And that's really what I'm after with some of these young people. So
now I want you to talk about, because you've had people internationally fly into Kilroy's who want to set up a school like you have.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. They almost always get it wrong. We're trying to work on something here that's going to help them get it right. The thing that they focus on is the wrong thing. It's the product. And so say if it's going to be welding, they focus so much on the welding and forget the person that neither one comes to fruition. And so that's one of the things that we run into, and we start the conversation there. But it's really hard for a craftsman to open up a school to teach a craft and to have the craft not be the center of what they do. Have you ever read Story Brand? It's a very good marketing book. Yeah,
yes.
You're right. It's really good. And what he talks about in there is, you're not the hero of your story. Your customers, when they come in, they're Luke Skywalker, you're Yoda. Right? Your job is to guide them. You're the guide. They're the person coming for that assistance. In this case, Yoda's job is to get to know Luke so that we can work
Yeah.
on the areas that need to be worked on, which is more than just the running a bead or picking up a hammer. There's more to the
Mhm.
individual than the task itself. And if you can actually get to the person and reach them, reach their heart, know what it is that they're there for, which sometimes is the task itself, but sometimes there's a bigger picture than that. They're really looking for a way forward, and this just happens to be where they're at right now. You can help guide them in a direction then as Yoda, so that they actually find really where God would have them be. And it might not be in the same spot that you are. I mean, it might be to, okay, you need to go over here. This would be a better fit for you. So sometimes
Yeah.
it's cost me people leaving, but it's gained me friends, because
Yeah.
we've helped each other find exactly where they should be for maximum success. And so that's really at the heart of it. And if a school can get that right, the product itself will take care of it. Like the thing that they're making. If the person feels like they're seen and they're heard and they're in the right spot, the technical part's going to come. And then again,
Yeah.
going back to Dale Carnegie, never flattery. You did that much well, really good. Do more, just like that. That's. Yeah, I'm not saying if I walk up and I say, they've got a train wreck of a weld that's running across their entire thing except for an inch, and I say that's amazing. They know better. But that one spot, or that was so much better than last time. Keep it up. Time after time, they're going to get it. And so, but given that correction, that critique, not criticism, is very, very important for a school like this as well. And sometimes craftsmen have a hard time backing up to when I first learned. It's kind of like the person with perfect pitch trying to teach music, and to a third grader. So sometimes that's a little
Yeah.
difficult. In this case, they've got to actually step back to when they were a student. And sometimes for empathy, I'll have our staff actually pick up a hammer with the left hand and try to forge something if they're right-handed, just
Mhm.
so they can see what it feels like that first time. Like, oh my word, that was really hard. That's what it's like for somebody coming in here who's never done this before. So finding that as well is a big thing for some of these schools. The other part of it is running it so that you can actually maintain some level of profitability, because a
Mhm.
broke school isn't going to be a school. And so
Yeah, no, it'll be out of business.
And so you got to make ends meet. So we actually wrote software here for the shop. It replaced 8 different software packages that we had. We had 8 different systems cobbled together, and it was abysmal. One of the main ones actually took 6.5% off the top. We were flatlined in
Wow.
sales for 2 years because I couldn't add more classes and have people actually find them. And it was taken for like posting 80 classes, it was taking a day and a half to post these things, which is ridiculous. And then I had 3 staff
Wow.
members dedicated to managing registration. And so this one software system, the change that we made, we were able to do 80 registrations in 15 minutes on somebody who had never seen the software, as opposed to a day and a half. Our costs
Wow.
dropped in the month that we went live associated with managing registrations by 87%, and revenue tied through that online system rose 300%. So finding that optimization also then helps us bring the cost of the classes down or maintain the level without having to raise them, because our internal costs are going through the roof. And then it's affordable for people to take the classes. So it all works together. But that's really hard for a new school to actually see and envision. So that's the reason for that running Kilroy's YouTube channel too.
Gotcha. Which I'm so glad you're doing it. So, anything you'd like to share with our listeners? Any last bits of thoughts?
Yeah. So for those who are just exploring, kicking the tires of homeschooling, um, my oldest is 24, and we've homeschooled all the way through. We knew nothing about homeschooling when we got started. The resources that you have available to you today, like this podcast, like online resources, like HSLDA, like state and local chapters for homeschooling, so much better than what we had back when we first started. Oh my word, the internet and all things related to it that are available to you. Don't let it intimidate you, though. It's kind of like how to eat an elephant, one bite at a time.
Mm.
It's the same thing with homeschooling. Just one bite at a time, and I promise you can do it. It is something that um, you wake up and you do tomorrow, and you got a plan, a general plan. And what is it? Mike Tyson says everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You can get your plans derailed. It's okay. This is an experience, but oh my word, the number of resources available that you can reach out and cry if you want to. You just say, this is just like so stressful, but understand the task is today, right? To do today's work. And then tomorrow will take care of itself, when you get there as well. And so just have that confidence in yourself. And I actually talk about this whenever I bring a new staff member on here from our student body. They'll feel a little intimidated switching to the other side. And what I'll tell them is, I have confidence that you can do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have hired you, because I know all of them when they come in. Mm-hmm. But they can borrow in my confidence in them for a time until they get their own. And so I know, I don't know who's watching this right now, but I have confidence that you can do it because I've done it. And so many other people I know have done it with varied backgrounds, that you can borrow in our confidence in you for a time as experienced homeschoolers to say, you'll be fine, and do today and focus there. And then eventually you'll get confidence of your own, and then you can actually pass that along to other people too. Pay it forward.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on. And moms, there are so many fun resources outside of the public school system that our kids, cool things that our kids can do, such as Kilroy's workshop. I know you guys, I reiterate what Ron just said, borrow from confidence of parents who have gone before you, because you are far more capable than you realize, and you're doing awesome. So with that, mamas, you got this, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this today, please like and subscribe. You could also join our private Facebook group at School to Homeschool, or sign up for our newsletter at www.schooltohomeschool. Have a great day.